This meeting is being held in a hybrid format with some members of the commission participating in person and some participating remotely as allowed pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 as extended. Some opening meeting announcements to help run this hybrid meeting smoothly. How to be recognized to speak. Members of the commission and the public can speak after being recognized by the chair. For those in person, commission members and/or staff may raise their hand and after being recognized, push the button on the microphone directly in front of their seat to speak and push again to turn off the mic once done. Members of the public attending in person will proceed to the podium to make their comments during the public comment section of the meeting. Once recognized by the chair, please state your name and then make your comment. Virtual attendees by Zoom or by telephone. For those online, click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of the screen. On some versions of Zoom, the raised hand icon will be under the more icon. For those who called in by phone, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute yourself. You'll be recognized by name when it is your time to speak. If anyone is having a technical issue, use either the chat box on your screen or call 508-362-3828 and staff will assist you. We'll be taking a roll call vote for each action we take today. I would ask all commission members to turn on their video if available. We're recording the meeting for the purpose of creating minutes. If anyone is also recording the meeting, please identify yourself. The names of commission members who are physically present and those who are remote participating will be announced after attendance roll call is taken. Before we call the roll, I'd like to welcome our newest member, our governor's appointee, Carlos Barbosa. Welcome, Carlos. And Jeff, if we could take the roll call attendance, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Catherine Ledeck.
Here.
Robert Frangi. Elizabeth Taylor. You're muted, Elizabeth. We can come back. Yes. Thomas Wilson.
Here.
Richard Roy. Michelle Vion.
Here.
John Drewley.
Here.
Jacqueline Edston.
Here.
Ernest Virgilio. Douglas Fromm.
Here.
Peter Oken.
Here.
Ann McManus. Kevin Grunwald.
Here.
David Mead Fox.
Here.
Dennis Prebenson.
Here.
Ronald Bergstrom. John Harris.
Here.
Dale Oakley. Carlos Barbosa.
Here.
And we'll come back to Elizabeth.
Here.
Perfect. So we do have a quorum, Mr. Chair, with 13 members present. In person are Catherine Ledeck, Thomas Wilson, John Drewley, Jacqueline Edston, Douglas Fromm, Peter Oken, Kevin Grunwald, Dennis Prebenson, and Carlos Barbosa. Participating virtually via Zoom is Elizabeth Taylor, Michelle Vion, David Mead Fox, and John Harris.
All right, thank you, Jeff. We now have a moment for public comment about items that are not on the agenda today. If anyone wishes to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move to review and approval of prior meeting minutes. This would be the subcommittee minutes from February 12th, 2026 for the 26 Shank Painter Road, Provincetown subcommittee meeting. I could have a motion to approve, assuming there are no changes to it.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second, Deb Fromm.
All right, and Jeff, if you could call the roll.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Michelle Vion.
Approved. Yes.
Douglas Fromm.
Yes.
Peter Oken.
Yes.
Kevin Grunwald.
Abstain.
and David Mead Fox.
Yes.
With 5 votes in favor, the motion, or sorry, 4 votes in favor, 1 abstention, the motion passes.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Next on the agenda is the Executive Director's Report. Christie?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is nice to see you all today, those of you that are here that in person and online. I know that last week was challenging with the blizzard, then I hope that everybody made out okay and weathered the storm without significant hardship. I do have a handful of updates for you today. Public comment on the final draft Eastham Climate Action Plan is being incorporated now into the final plan. This will be presented to the Select Board for their approval on March 16th. This plan was developed, as you know, with extensive community engagement and likely will be a model for other towns that are continuing to advance their climate action planning at the local level. We are also continuing to monitor the Cape Canal Bridges replacement project, including attending public hearings and meetings and open houses that are being hosted by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. Steve Tupper and I are also continuing to participate in meetings of the Cape and Islands Bridges Coalition, as well as the Canal Bridges Advisory Group. And earlier this week, Erin Perry and I met with the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund Management Board's Executive Committee to review estimated revenue projections for 2026 to 2030 from both Dukes and Nantucket County communities, should they join the fund in the future. And that committee voted to recommend to the management board that they advance some regulatory amendments that would be necessary to accommodate new member communities to the fund. And we anticipate that Oak Bluffs may be the first island community to join the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund. Staff are reviewing currently proposals from consultants to perform 2 different analyses. The first is a tax revenue analysis to better understand tax revenue across the region and how it varies from development pattern and building typology. And the second is an analysis of the impacts of sea level rise and flooding on the tax base. This project is expected to produce strategies for shifting coastal development inland and to help proactively plan to reallocate that tax burden. Staff are also developing a scope of work for the regional open space planning process. As you know, this is one of the recommendations within the regional policy plan, and we look forward to advancing this initiative within the next several months. We are also working on updating the Cape Cod Commission's website. We anticipate completion of that sometime later on this year, so certainly we'll keep you updated. We're also continuing to pursue a purchase of the Finney's Lane property for the commission offices, as I've mentioned previously. A lot of work to be done there, but certainly we'll keep you updated. And then finally, I was in front of the Assembly of Delegates yesterday presenting the 2025 year in review. I know many of you received a hard copy if you were here at the last meeting. I also have several with me today. If you didn't have a chance to grab one, I'm happy to share that with you. It's also available virtually and on our website. So with that, I'll hand it back to you.
All right, thank you, Christie. Next item on our agenda is the public hearing for the Yarmouth Local Comprehensive Plan. Cape Cod Commission will hold a hybrid public hearing to consider whether it will certify the Town of Yarmouth's Local Comprehensive Plan in accordance with Section 9 of the Cape Cod Commission Act and the Cape Cod Commission's Local Comprehensive Plan regulations. The Town of Yarmouth will make a presentation. Joanne Crowley.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wilson, members of the Commission, Executive Director Senatori. Thank you for this opportunity to join you today for this presentation of the Yarmouth Local Comprehensive Plan, which defines our vision of how we will plan for growth and change, as well as protect the resources we share with our neighboring towns. It's an important source of information of our existing conditions, our goals for land use and economic development, and our plan for capital facilities investment, our housing production plan, and most importantly, a targeted action plan. The LCP is the culmination of years of work and strong public involvement to create a community master plan to guide our decisions over the next many years. I am pleased and very proud to present and submit to you for your consideration our local comprehensive plan. I'd like to thank Commission staff, especially Chloe Schaefer, for guiding us through this process to ensure that we were compliant with your regulations and consistent with the regional policy plan. My thanks as well to BSC Group, our consultant. Kathy Williams, our incredible town planner, who has worked tirelessly over several years to make this happen, has a short presentation for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kathy?
Thank you for having us. We're very excited to be here. It's been a very long journey, but a very productive one as well. I'm just gonna, well, where do I next? I did. Okay, there we go. Okay. I'm just going to jump into community engagement. As you know, that's one of the most important components because we want to be making our local comprehensive plan local to Yarmouth. So we really need to know what our community thinks. So we started back in 2020 with our visioning project, where we did a lot of public engagement to come up with our original vision statement and also kind of identify the things that were important to Yarmouth and also the things that we might need to work on. We took that and started as a baseline for our local comprehensive plan engagement, which happened in 2024 and 2025 with a lot of different engagement plans. But I think one of the real key things was doing these individualized stakeholder interviews with different town staff, with boards and committees. We went to the DY Regional School District, really to find out they're the experts in these areas. What's going on in your area? What are your problems? What are your needs? What are your key issues? And how can we help address them in the future? Whoops. Excuse me, I'm getting used to this. So our vision that we came up with was we were looking for our community to be a great place to live, work, play, and learn. We want an attractive and affordable and inclusive community that has a lot of good, clean, healthy, sustainable environment, a great, strong economic base with a bunch of different diverse businesses, as well as a lot of fun places to recreate and socialize, as well as educational excellence. With regard to our growth policy, we're really looking for managed growth in areas that are appropriate with regard to protecting our resources and protecting our community character, but also things that are going to be benefiting our community overall. So we're looking for economic growth really kind of being in our Route 28 corridor, which is our main economic corridor, as well as our premier hotel properties along South Shore Drive. That also happens to be within our phase 1 of our sewer systems as well. We're also looking at some other areas. We have some beautiful little village centers on Route 6A that could be developed a little bit more. And also we have a very unique opportunity right now with the 70-acre town-owned former Matakees Middle School property. We're currently undergoing a reuse analysis to come up with different uses for that very unique property. And hopefully it will serve a bunch of different needs in our community. So when we laid out our LCP, we were consistent with the regional policy plan, and we left it into the natural systems, built systems, and community systems. We did move some of the elements around a little bit, and we also added in town services because that was something that came out of the visioning process that was really important to our community. We were very fortunate that we had a bunch of other plans that had recently been updated. We had the 2023 Open Space and Recreation Plan, as well as the 2024 Housing Production Plan that we were able to lean on. So we used all of this information and developed all those different key existing conditions. We identify what are our key issues and needs. What are we doing to address those right now? What are some of the recent actions, not just the town has been doing, but what maybe the region has been doing? And that helped us to identify our goals and our actions. I'm not going to get into the weeds too much on this, but I wanted to go over very briefly how we were coming up with different action items under different elements in order to meet the goals that we have. Wastewater obviously is a huge issue for Cape Cod, and we are knee deep in construction in our phase 1 of our wastewater, but we can't lose sight of the fact that we have other phases that we need to be concentrating on and how we're going to be funding those. One of the key issues that we have right now has to do with finding sufficient effluent discharge locations. So it's a challenge for us right now. With regard to water supply, we have our sole source aquifer. We want to make sure that we are doing protective measures with regard to water quality and also water conservation and keeping up with our water infrastructure. Freshwater and saltwater resources, we have a lot of actions related to a couple tidal restoration projects that we have ongoing, as well as our stormwater projects, and then tapping into and really looking into all of those freshwater strategies that the Cape Cod Commission worked up and see how they might apply to the town of Yarmouth. Wetland resources, always staying on top of a bunch of wetland restoration projects that we have going on in the town of Yarmouth, always taking a look at our regulations. Anything that's grayed out is like a bylaw or a zoning regulation that we would need to be looking at. And also taking a look at any acquisitions we might be wanting to do for salt marsh or wetland migration due to sea level rise. Plant and wildlife habitat, we were doing a lot with invasive species, especially with regard to our Chase Brook Park project. We're also doing annual review of vernal pool locations on town property so that we can be sure that we're protecting those very special breeding grounds. And then with regard to open space, we're always working on different ways that we can properly maintain our open space, improve the signage for people to get around, and then also whether we want to be acquiring any other land for open space. All of the natural systems that I've mentioned so far were highly taken from our open space and recreation plan. We did happen to include coastal resiliency in the natural systems, and this is something where we're looking at continuing to update our hazard mitigation plan. We've been working with Martha Heavener here at the commission, and we were able to submit it to MEMA for their review, so we've made a lot of progress on that. Just keeping up with the Packet Landing Marine Resiliency Project, and we're also going to be looking at a erosion, accretion, and shoaling study at Lewis Bay. So getting into some of the built systems, community design and land use, that's very regulatory heavy. We really want to take a really strong look at our zoning bylaw and see if we can simplify things. We want to be sure that our design standards are reasonable so people can actually afford to construct things once they get through. We also, as I mentioned earlier, that Mattakees property, we're going to have to look at zoning changes associated with that, as well as updating our growth incentive policy, which is good through 2031. Transportation and connectivity, that actually has a lot of different action items associated with it. We have a lot of Mass DOT projects that are going on, especially on Route 28, but also one on 6A in the Village Center. We also worked with the Cape Cod Commission with regard to the Station Avenue corridor study, and there's a lot of short-term and long-term goals on that we want to start digging into and seeing what we can do about that. Climate mitigation and energy. This is obviously a strong one. We're always looking at different ways we can incorporate green infrastructure and reduce greenhouse gases within our particular projects in our community. We also have a reconstituted energy committee, and they're very interested in getting and diving into and getting their teeth into these particular goals. Waste management, as we all know, is getting harder and harder to find place to get rid of our waste, especially even our composted waste. So looking at possible regional ways of doing that, or ways of converting these waste products into some type of energy and kind of combining a bunch of different things. Also in the build systems is our capital infrastructure and facilities, identifying what we need to do in order to manage the growth that we want to have. But we've incorporated all the actual goals and the individual elements within the LCP itself. So community character and cultural heritage, we really want to emphasize the historic nature of Yarmouth and have an initiative to that, and probably bring additional tourism to our community. We just had a public arts committee that's been formed to look at different type of public art throughout our community. We're evaluating a town common across from Town Hall. And we're also going to be installing a Revolutionary War monument. We're going to have a big grand opening in June for that. The economy, I say that multiple times because we all know how difficult it is on Cape Cod for the economy, and that economy is actually tied into every single other element that's talked about in the local comprehensive plan. So looking at a bunch of different ways of doing that with the Community Development Corporation. But one of the things that we're really concentrating on is seeing if we can't get some higher level, division level staff that's going to be concentrating solely on economic development in the town of Yarmouth. I think we need that concentrated effort in that avenue. And housing, as I mentioned, we really relied heavily on the housing production plan, but there was a couple things that kind of happened since the housing production plan was developed. One of those being the different housing opportunities that might come out of the Mattakees reuse analysis that's being done, and also the Affordable Homes Act, the funding that's available there, and how we might be able to tap into that, as well as we're just completed actually a short-term rental study in the town of Yarmouth and seeing how we can incorporate that into some additional rules or regulations if needed. Town services, this isn't something that you guys require in a local comprehensive plan, but this came out of our visioning process, as I mentioned. And so we have different actions related to government, public safety, health, library, senior services, and education and learning. And the last one is recreation. Again, this relied heavily on our open space and recreation plan as well. So a lot of it is just completing a lot of the great projects that we have currently going on. We just recently completed the field study. Again, we're looking at recreational opportunities at Mattakees and identifying our various ways to water in our community. And of course, the heart of every LCP is the implementation matrix, because this is where all the magic happens. So we have identified the goals and the actions, and then we looked at the time frame. And what time frame in this 10-year plan are we going to be working on it? Is it going to be year 2 to year 4? Is it going to be year 5 to year 7? So we can kind of spread things out, as well as identifying the responsible parties and then potential funding sources. This is something that the planning board is going to be reviewing annually, and we're going to be providing updates to the commission as well as the select board on an annual basis. And as Joanne mentioned, I just want to say thank you to everyone who helped develop this local comprehensive plan. It wasn't developed in a vacuum. And the planning board members, past, present, and future, because we're going to be working on this for the next 10 years, did a yeoman's work and did a lot of homework, and they really put a lot of effort into it, as well as the support of our select board, and then, of course, our amazing community, the business community, the residents. They all came out to provide their input. We really had a great, wonderful community meeting in January with the energy level was high. We were seeing new people. There was new ideas we hadn't heard about before. It really energized us and the planning board with this project as well. And our consultants, BSC Group, who helped us with the local comprehensive plan, but also Horsley Witten helped us with the visioning. And then, of course, the Cape Cod Commission members and the staff has been wonderful with helping us get through this process. The template and the streamlining of it has been enormously helpful. And I think you've seen that with the number of communities that have been able to come up with a completed LCP and come before you with certification. So just wanted to thank everybody for all your help. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Kathy and Joanne. And next on the agenda is Chloe with the staff presentation.
All right, good afternoon. Chloe Schaefer, Chief Planner here at the Commission. And I am thrilled to be here before you with yet another LCP for certification. As Kathy said, we are now seeing a lot of them come through, and I think that's really great and also reflects the more streamlined process put in place with our updated regulations from 2019. So as part of certification, we certainly look for consistency with the regional policy plan and the goals of the Cape Cod Commission Act, but our requirements do lay out 6 different elements that we look for in the LCP: a vision statement, existing conditions section, goals for the town, a capital facilities plan, housing plan, and targeted action plan. You've heard a lot of this already from Kathy, but I am going to step through kind of those required elements, but also want to start with certainly the public engagement that they did. Also something we look for when we're doing certification, make sure that it's really a plan representative of the community and the community's wishes and desires. And certainly there was a ton of public engagement done on this plan, open house, community meetings, ways to provide input online as well as in person. And that really helped to form a plan and vision that reflects the town of Yarmouth. So the vision, as she mentioned, is something really focusing on the town being a great place to live, work, play, and learn. And in addition to kind of that broader overarching vision, they provide more details below within those buckets of live, work, play, and learn, kind of provide more specifics. And we look for a vision statement as really something that articulates the shared values of a community, where they want to grow in the future, also what they want to protect, and really kind of providing that roadmap for decision making and making sure that it's also consistent with the vision of the regional policy plan. And that goes in hand also with a growth policy. They have a detailed growth policy, I will say, and part of what we look for there is consideration given to the Cape Cod place types. And here I've bolded a few of those areas. They call out specifically community activity centers, historic areas, and natural areas, and include kind of the whole breadth of them as well within their LCP. So certainly feel like their vision and growth policy and the consideration they give to the place types meets that requirement. Next, we look for an existing conditions section and to understand the current landscape of the town, the challenges facing these different areas. As Kathy mentioned, they were utilizing the organizing principle similar to the regional policy plan of the natural, built, and community systems. And underneath each of those more specific areas, and the plan really does a great job of laying out kind of the existing conditions within each of those for the town and opportunities and challenges as they move forward. Next, we look for the goals and consistency of the LCP goals relative to those in the regional policy plan. There are 15 different RPP goals you're very familiar with within those natural, built, and community systems. As Kathy mentioned, they introduced one for town services as well, which this is something we frequently see in an LCP. They might add additional goals or tailor some a little bit. And that's definitely appropriate and makes sense because they're taking them and making sure that they are really reflective of their community's needs. So they have several that are kind of in those same buckets as the RPP and others that are in slightly modified, but certainly staff feel that they're all consistent with the goals of the regional policy plan. And here you can see they've grouped them again under the natural built-in community systems, but having some towards the end, they're related more to like town services and government. Next, the capital facilities plan. Within the LCP, we're looking for the existing conditions and challenges related to capital facilities and infrastructure, what projects are needed for the town, especially in terms of kind of working towards the vision of the LCP, potential funding sources and strategies, and there that last one, the project that will really support that LCP vision. And the project or the plan certainly has all of that. They've laid out pretty concisely in some tables within it what the infrastructure is and specifically those challenges or constraints, but then also noting kind of related LCP goals, descriptions of those projects, potential funding sources, and potential timeframes as well. So this is consistent with that requirement. Next, under housing, we look for either a certified housing production plan or the information below that being assessment of demand, an analysis of the housing landscape and needs and goals and actions. They do have a current certified housing production plan, so they meet that requirement through that, but also I would note that the LCP contains the information as well below in terms of housing needs and kind of assessment of the current needs for the town there. And then last but certainly not least is the targeted action plan. And the things we look for in there are potential bylaw amendments the town would explore, the capital projects needed to advance their vision, housing specific actions that could be bylaws or implementation of actions noted in their housing production plan, as well as other action items under the different issue areas to help, again, the town work towards its vision that it's articulated. Also looking for enough information in those actions to understand the progress or performance being made on those, and also look for an anticipated meeting schedule with town staff and Cape Cod Commission staff to check in and see how things are progressing in terms of LCP implementation. And so the Yarmouth LCP contains a chapter that is a targeted action plan, again, with those specific issue areas and the goals and actions underneath it to help advance those goals. But in addition, as Kathy mentioned, they also have an implementation matrix that really dives deeper into those specific action, provides timeframes, responsible partners, funding sources there, and really provides all that information to be able to understand kind of what progress is being made on those actions and who's responsible for that. Also within that section, they talk about kind of their reporting to the select board and how that will progress, as well as an anticipated annual meeting with Cape Cod Commission staff. So we find that this meets that requirement there. And so we're certainly happy to take any questions, but I would just like to say that we definitely, staff recommend that the commission certify the town of Yarmouth LCP as consistent with the 2018 RPP and the requirements of the Cape Cod Commission Act and our LCP regulations. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chloe. Next, we'll move to commission member questions. Any members online, raise your hand if you have a question, or those here in person. Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to start by saying these plans just keep getting better and better. And I think that is a reflection of town staff, but also the responsiveness of the towns doing these plans. So this is really a great document. I have a couple questions. One is, when was your previous local comprehensive plan?
We never have had a certified plan. This would be our first certified plan. And we have various sections. I mean, some of them are like 1998 and the more recent was like 2015. So this is the first time we have comprehensively all at once done it, all the elements together.
So this may not be a fair question, but I'm going to ask you to try to answer it. Can you tell me what might be some of the significant changes? And you don't need to go through the whole plan, but just a couple of things that stand out from previous planning that you might have done or previous
I've
goals?
only been with the town of Yarmouth since 2012. So unfortunately, I am not, didn't spend a lot of time looking at in the depth at the previous local comprehensive plan. But I did look at some sections. I was actually surprised at how many things we actually had accomplished and had done. So it was a useful document. We had actually made some progress on it.
Thanks. I love live, work, play, and learn. Great place to do that. And I also like the way in which you described what that actually means. So it's not just a phrase, but it actually you've spelled out what it does. I think the implementation matrix is also incredibly helpful. I guess my one question is just about accountability for accomplishing the plan. I know it sounds like the planning department is primarily responsible for that. You do have an annual report to the select board and also to the Cape Cod Commission. But is this designed to be, I'm assuming, to be consistent with your select board's goals? And did you talk about a mechanism where individual elements of the implementation matrix would actually require some level of accountability as you go through ongoing review?
Yes, definitely. It would be a combination of myself and the planning board. We're like symbiotic at this particular point with regard to, we would need help from everybody because every department is listed and multiple action items. So annually, what I envision is sending out an inquiry to all the different staff members and kind of say, where do you stand on these different things? And then we could, if need be, have a group meeting to talk about them and then compile them into some type of summary that we can then present to you guys to kind of indicate to you where we stand, as well as give a presentation to the select board.
Okay, great. Thank you. And again, kudos to everybody who worked on this, including residents who provided input to this. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Michelle, I see your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, to Kevin's point, this is an excellent document. Thank you. My question is, you referenced the open space recreation plan as sort of a reference point for this. And as somebody who's been recently working on one in Eastham, my question is, what is the date on that? Like, how recent was that refreshed?
2023.
Okay, thank you very much.
Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo Kevin and Michelle's comments. Thank you for bringing forward a very well-prepared document, and thank you to the staff for all of their efforts to bring it forward. And you're right, the plans are in fact getting better as time goes on. I have a bit of an interest in Yarmouth. I have family there, so I know the town very well. And many aspects of this plan really are addressing some of the needs that I have seen as I pass through various parts of the town. I'm very pleased to see a lot of that. I noticed in one of the slides that you showed a note, resiliency for town properties. I'd like to hear a little bit about what you're referring to. I think, and this is of course my own opinion, that could include land management practices for town properties, not just large open areas, but also land around town-owned properties like the town hall or the library. And I'm interested in whether you're thinking about pursuing more ecologically friendly landscaping practices on those properties. Residents tend to look to the town as a good example or a best practice example for how to manage their own lands. And if we begin to improve that at the town level, then perhaps those practices may be replicated on private property, thereby improving the environmental conditions of the town more generally.
We're not quite that ambitious, but I do think with regard to plantings, obviously we're doing extensive invasive species whenever we can management. In the recently completed Parker's River Landing, it's not quite done, but there's an extensive amount of invasive species that we identified during development of that and got rid of it. As well as I mentioned, the Chasebrook Park project has a lot that are going to be taking care of it. With regard to things like commercial developments, we typically do require, and we don't typically, it's in the zoning bylaw that we require native species just for those particular reasons. And we do have a lot of documents on our website with regard to things that individual property owners and homeowners can do around their property, whether it might be with regard to the amount of fertilizer that they're putting in, the type of plantings that they're doing so that they're drought resistant and they're not causing a lot of water consumption and those types of things.
Excellent plan. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. John, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't have a chance to see your housing production plan, but could you share with us what percentage of your housing is currently considered affordable?
About 5%, 4.96%.
And do you have a goal to get to a certain percentage?
We want to do 62 units per year in the housing production plan.
To get to what percentage of approximately?
Eventually, the goal is to get to 10%. I'm not sure whether we'll ever quite get there, but the idea is to keep making consistent improvement and progress.
Okay, you're going to try to accomplish 62.
That's the goal in the housing production plan, is 62 units
Okay.
per year.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Any other commission member questions? Thank you, Kathy. Then we'll move to any federal, state, or local officials who may wish to speak. I see Robert Whitmore. Please go ahead, Robert.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Thank you. Robert Rittenauer. I'm the town administrator in the town of Yarmouth. I'll keep my comments brief. I appreciated listening to the elements laid out very much. I do want to salute the Yarmouth Planning Board and our town planner, Kathy Williams, for an enormous piece of work for our community. And in Yarmouth, we're extraordinarily proud of this effort. And I just want to say a couple of points is that one of the reasons that this document is so important for the town of Yarmouth is that it serves to knit together what's been decades and decades of planning efforts around various issues in the community, whether it's our hazard mitigation plan and the resilience, or the housing production, our growth management strategies, all together under our comprehensive plan has enabled us to articulate a common vision for our community across all of these various issues. And that was so important in our community, which we view very proud of the efforts that we have to engage local residents and outreach folks to involve them in local affairs. But this comprehensive planning effort, by far, I think, set a new standard for our community in terms of engagement and involving people. And by having that strategy, the mission across the entire town, it really engaged a tremendous amount of enthusiasm in the community. And, when we brought this to town meeting, people applauded. I mean, it's just became a real rallying point for our community. And I do want to say as well, throughout the process, we had multiple public hearings in front of the select board, in front of other officials in the town. And we have an annual goal setting process with the select board, and working through my office. We focused very strongly on that whole matrix for implementation. And it's really at this point beyond just in terms of planning. It's going to be a community-wide effort, and the select board and I personally will be participating in ensuring that the type of responsiveness in terms of the town departments to the implementation of those goals is going to be strong. So it has transcended into a major community effort. And I also thank the commission staff in terms of the guidance, ensuring throughout the process that we stayed in line with the goals of the regional policy plan. So I thank the commission, and thank you for the opportunity to make some comments.
Thank you, sir. Joyce Flynn, I see your hand is raised. Please go ahead. Joyce, you're muted. Still muted.
Yes. Joyce Flynn, member of Yarmouth Select Board. I'm really proud of all the work that the community has done, especially Kathy Williams, for this comprehensive plan that looks at Yarmouth in years as we would like to see it going forward. The world may not be perfect, but the comprehensive plan certainly suggests how Yarmouth can take step by step toward a better Yarmouth. You could not have asked for more public outreach. I know different committee members have weighed in from other town committees and worked with Kathy on amendments here and there. And it's no small thing that it was applauded at the town meeting and passed unanimously at the select board, because if you know the town of Yarmouth, we don't always agree on everything. I think it's wonderful. Please give it your full approval.
Thank you very much. We'll now open it to members of the public who wish to speak. Anybody in the audience, please approach the podium. Anybody online, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to certify the Town of Yarmouth Local Comprehensive Plan as consistent with the 2018 Regional Policy Plan and the requirements of the Cape Cod Commission Act and the Commission's Local Comprehensive Plan regulations.
I'll move that we approve it.
Thank you, Dennis. And a second?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jackie. And Jeff, if you could do the roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Catherine Ledeck,
Yes.
Elizabeth Taylor,
Yes.
Thomas Wilson,
Yes.
Michelle Vian,
Yes.
John Drewley,
Yes.
Jacqueline Edston,
Yes.
Douglas Fromm,
Yes.
Peter Oken,
Yes.
Kevin Grunwald,
Yes.
David Mead Fox,
Sorry. Yes.
Dennis Prebenson,
Yes.
and John Harris.
Yes.
With 12 votes in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you to the Town of Yarmouth for your presentation. Next item on our agenda today is a public hearing on 26 Shank Painter Road, Provincetown, Mass. Development of Regional Impact. Cape Cod Commission will conduct a hybrid public hearing on the following project. The project has been referred to the Cape Cod Commission as a mandatory development of regional impact, DRI, pursuant to sections 12 and 13 of the Cape Cod Commission Act as amended. At the hearing, the commission will hear testimony, discuss the project, and may vote whether to approve the project. The project is 26 Shank Painter Road, Cape Cod Commission file number 25017. The project applicant is Ecotecture Salient Partners LLC. Property owner is the Town of Provincetown. Project location is 26 Shank Painter Road and 15 Brown Street, Provincetown, Mass. And the project description is: the project proposes to redevelop the former police station property into a 40-unit home ownership residential development, including below market value units. The project proposes to construct a new 4-story building of approximately 30,000 square feet and associated site improvements. We'll begin today with the applicant's presentation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I am Christine Barker. I'm here representing ESP as the applicant. Thank you very much for your time and attention today. We appreciate it. I'm also here with Eliza Cox from Lattanzi, Spalding, and Landreth. Virtually, Jeffrey Burchard is here from Machado and Salvetti. They are the architecture firm. Our engineering firm is Ty and Bond, doing civil, structural, and MEP. Howard Stein and Hudson is our traffic engineers, and Weston and Sampson, our landscape company. So let me just push this forward. I've just described the project team. 26 Shank Painter is a project that we have we are doing in conjunction with the town of Provincetown. It is designed to bring, as you said, 40 units of housing to the town, 30 of which are below market value. I will just go through the. Oops. The timeline for the project in April of 2023. Provincetown issued an RFP for a developer to design, construct, operate, and manage at least 24 middle-income rental housing units at the site, which was the former site of the Provincetown Police Station. And on June 1st, ESP submitted a proposal in response to the RFP. July 24th of 2023, the Select Board voted unanimously to award the project to us. And on the 26th, we received a formal letter of award from the town of Provincetown. And then in last year, March not last year, in March of 2024, we executed the purchase and sale agreement between the town and ESP. And then at town meeting last year, the town approved a contribution of $4 million in support of the project, toward the project. So I'm going to hand it over to Jeffrey Burchard, the project architect, who's going to walk you through the project. Thank you very much.
Christine, you may need to stay there to advance the slides unless someone else can advance the slides.
Sorry, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Burchard. Thank you for accommodating Zoom connections for this. I appreciate it very, very much. My firm, Machado Silvetti, has been working with Christine and her partners in Provincetown on this and several other projects. And also we designed a little while ago the addition to the Provincetown Art Association Museum in Provincetown. We love the city and the Cape and are really honored to partner with Christine and with the town on this really meaningful project to bring housing to Provincetown, which is so needed. The site is on Shank Painter Road, as was mentioned. And as you can see here, it's about halfway from the coast to the highway to Route 6. And if we zoom into the next slide, I think it's useful to kind of contextualize the site. We all know the wonderful character of Commercial Street. You just go back one to the, back. One more. Perfect. Excellent. Okay. So Shank Painter Road is one of the connectors from Route 6 down towards the kind of downtown, down towards Bradford Street and Commercial Street. It's important to note that this particular corridor is home to some of the larger plots and larger buildings in Provincetown, not the least of which is, of course, the large Stop and Shop, which is really just about a 3-minute walk north of the project site. The Provincetown Fire Department is there as well. United Methodist Church right next door, and then another building that was built just to the neighbor. It's 30 Shank Painter Road that was built fairly recently as well. This corridor is also being looked at by the town as a place for development of the size that we are proposing. There are two other, there's one other sort of similarly scaled housing project that's happening just up the road at 44 Captain Birdie's, a project that you approved recently that's under construction now. And then this project, the town has recently gone through a zoning overlay for the Shank Painter Road District that allows for taller, larger, mixed-use buildings, all connected through improvements to the bike and pedestrian pathway to basically increase the density of Shank Painter Road and make it a more bikeable and walkable street. Next slide. Great. On the left, we can see that corner of Shank Painter Road and Brown Street. In fact, the parcel is kind of has these two frontages. The main one is on Shank Painter. Secondary one is on Brown Street. And it is, as was mentioned, the former home of the police station, which has since moved further up Shank Painter Road into their new building. On the right, you can see that police station, which is a 1.5-story building sitting above grade, and it has a basement as well. You can kind of see it in this image, but it sits up on a little bit of a knoll so that the first floor of the police station is several feet above the roadway. And then you can kind of see it in those steps that lead to the front entrance there. And then on the lower image on the right is the back, and you can see the police station in the middle. To the left is the building at 30 Schenck Painter, and in the far distance on the right of that image is the church in the distance. And in the foreground, we can see the diagonal parking. Next slide. The site is basically almost entirely paved or built on, with the exception of those two little patches of kind of green grass at the Schenck Painter Road entrance. At that Schenck Painter Road entrance right now, there are two curb cuts that basically create a kind of a porco share drive-through to the police station. But there's mostly the site is paved. There is a FEMA zone that just clips the corner of the site, and it's at an EL 9. Okay, so next slide. This is the proposed footprint. The building footprint is about 7,700 square feet, and at 3.5 stories comes to about 30,000 square feet for the building. We are substantially, even though we're increasing the footprint of the building, we are substantially increasing also the pervious surface area in the front, along the sides, and in the rear. There is accessible entrances at the middle of the building. The design flood elevation here is 11 feet, so that's where we're putting our first floor. And then we have accessible walkways from both Schenck Painter Road and Brown Street to that center point of the site, where you can enter really right at the middle of the building. Christine will talk a little bit more about this later, as will Liza, but the charge for this project from the city and also from the developers was really to prioritize people over parking. And the parking that's allotted here is just 3 spaces. Those include the 2 accessible spaces that would be required for a kind of a boilerplate count of parking requirements. And then the other spaces for people will be through the utilization of public parking lots that are nearby, across, very nearby, and also across Schenck Painter Road. There is also bicycle parking. There's at least 1 outdoor bicycle rack per unit, as well as a little bit of a buffer for a guest. And then, of course, there's an elevator in the building. So if people want to store their bikes inside their unit, they can do that as well. Next. Great. So it is a 3.5 story building, which is the as of right approach under the new Schenck Painter zoning overlay. This is done through these kind of horizontal bands. There's a lower level, and then second and third floor, and then the top floor set back on all the sides, different dimensions, and given a bit of a hat. So it looks more like a penthouse sort of structure sitting on top of the lower portions of the building. Next slide. Great. So here on the far right is that path. The person in the 80s jacket there with the red on the bottom is walking up that path towards the accessible entrance, which is at the middle zone of the building. You can see some of the bike parking there. Along the front, along Schenck Painter here, that's a porch that is meant to be kind of a community amenity for the building, where people sit on their porch and sort of enjoy the scene and people walking by, something very familiar to Provincetown's development. There are outdoor terraces and space for some little balconies on all of the levels. And then again, you can see the penthouse on the top. The materials are a combination of horizontal and vertical weathered wood elements that resemble the kind of coloration of weathered wood in Provincetown. Next slide. Great. This is from the front. You can see again some of those details a little bit more. The wide open porch on the lower level, the 2 levels of apartments up above, and then the terrace on the upper floor, with the upper building, or the sort of penthouse building, set back quite a bit of distance from that front face. Next slide. And then here's looking from basically from Brown Street. Again, you can start to see that front door on the left there with the canopy that goes into the middle portion of the building. It makes for a very efficient floor plan where we can get that unit count of 40 units here. There are studio 1s and 2s, and those units are mixed up throughout the building. And then on the next slide, maybe. Okay, great. So some of the sustainability features, of course, we're complying with the Massachusetts Stretch Code. There are EV charging stations for those parking spaces in that lot. We're targeting LEED Silver compliance. And then, of course, we're using everything that you need to meet the stretch code means that you're naturally using things like Lowy windows and Energy Star qualified appliances, of course, LED light fixtures and high efficiency mechanical systems, and water efficient toilets and whatnot. And then the materials, we're looking at recycled, renewable, and particularly resilient materials throughout, which is really important in Provincetown, and also for a housing project where you are targeting levels of affordability so that we have resilient materials that will last and stand the test of time. So for instance, the exterior, we're proposing to use Luna wood panels, which are sustainably harvested. They're small boards, and they're treated to ensure resiliency. So they've got quite robust material, and they also come with the weathered appearance. So there isn't that kind of transition zone, which is really nice. We're proposing for the rooftop to be solar ready. It's quite a bit of surface, but committing to solar yet is not quite, we're not quite at that point. And then we are adding storm water treatment and landscaping to the entire site. Right now, it doesn't really have any kind of system. It's just all runs off and into the city systems. Next. Okay. This was already mentioned. We did do mentioned a little bit. We did do the traffic analysis. The trip generation is relatively light. But what I wanted to mention here most of all is that Brown Street curb cut and that parking drop off area is sort of a triple function space. It's both for those accessible vehicles to park. It's also enough space that when vehicles are parked, another vehicle can come in and drop stuff off, and or like an Amazon van or a truck or something can get into that parking lot and get out again in order to bring packages to that door that's in the middle. All of those kinds of deliveries and sort of day-to-day use would come off of Brown Street and into that parking lot. There's also a trash, is where the trash is, which allows Schenck Painter Road to basically, we eliminate the curb cuts on Schenck Painter and improve the connections to the sidewalk. And on the next slide, you'll kind of see that that's in relationship to ongoing plan by Mass DOT. This is a 25% development drawing to improve that corridor and to enhance the walkability and the bikeability of Schenck Painter all the way from Route 6 into the downtown. So we're kind of plugging into that network that's already coming and reducing the amount of curb cuts that will cut across those pedestrian and bicycle lanes, which will be a really, really massive improvement. Also, that pink vertical line there in the middle, that's a proposed crosswalk that would take you to the other side of Schenck Painter towards where the fire department is, and also where some of the potential public parking could be for this project. Next slide. Okay, I think this now goes to Liza. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, I'm Eliza Cox with Lattanzi, Spalding, and Landreth in Orleans on behalf of the applicant. Pleased to walk through our final slide of our presentation this afternoon. We've listed on this slide some of the many benefits of this project, and what I would say in sort of summarizing them is that the benefits here are significant and positively impactful. As you heard earlier in our presentation, this project, which proposes to deliver 40 new units of housing in a walkable downtown environment, represents an innovative public-private partner collaboration with the town of Provincetown and my client, who you heard from this morning, to create housing that's affordable across a range of income levels. Subject to negotiations with the town, 75% of the 40 units, so 30 units, are proposed to have income level restrictions ranging from affordable, workforce, and attainable. 10 of the income restricted units are conditioned in your draft decision to be limited to 80 to 150% of AMI, which significantly exceeds the Cape Cod Commission requirements. And just to put some context on this proposed level of income restriction, the last, I think, 4 housing projects that the Cape Cod Commission has reviewed and improved all have significantly fewer percentages of restricted units. By way of example, Captain Birdie's Way, which is in Provincetown, which the commission approved in April, has 28% restricted units. The Wilkins campus in Barnstable, which was a phase 1 and a phase 2 that the commission approved, both phases only proposed 13% restricted, and the Quartera development in Hyannis, which was approved as I think a development agreement by the commission in 2023, had 13% of units restricted. So as you can see, this particular development proposes to significantly exceed those levels of restricted units as compared to what the commission typically sees, and significantly exceeds what the commission's regulations require. In addition, as indicated on the slide, as proposed, the project is going to increase Provincetown's home restricted ownership inventory by about 50%. The project also aligns perfectly with the commission's vision for development and redevelopment within a community activity center, which this is a mapped community activity center under the RPP. And as Jeffrey mentioned, with the town's vision for the recently adopted Schenck Painter Road Overlay District, and there is correspondence in the file from the town planner also confirming this. In addition, as Jeffrey mentioned, this is important because these are areas where there are resources and infrastructure that exist to support this type of development in a walkable community close to within the downtown and close to amenities, sidewalks, and bike paths. In addition, there are also numerous site improvements that are proposed with this redevelopment, including reducing the amount of nitrogen load that will be generated at this site, reducing impervious coverage as compared to existing conditions, and as Jeffrey mentioned, new stormwater management where really none exists at the moment. So in closing, I wanted to thank the subcommittee very much for their time and efforts in reviewing this decision, especially recognize and thank Alex Peterson, who was the regulatory officer in charge of our process, and ask for the commission's positive vote on the draft decision that's before you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next up will be Alex Peterson with the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Alex Peterson, Legal and Regulatory Specialist with Cape Cod Commission. So you've already heard an extensive description of the project, but proposes a new 4-story building with 40 housing units, with a significant number of those below market rate. The project is a mandatory DRI pursuant to our enabling regulations, as it's a development plan to create 30 or more residential dwelling units. The applicant submitted a DRI application, which was subsequently referred to the commission by the town. A substantive hearing was held in person in Provincetown by the subcommittee in December of 2025, and then additional hearings were held in January and February of this year. At the conclusion of those hearings, the subcommittee reviewed a draft decision and voted to recommend approval of the project with conditions by the full commission. For the commission to approve a development of regional impact, they must make findings that the proposed project is consistent with the Cape Cod Commission Act, the regional policy plan in place at the time of the first substantive hearing on the project. And that's important for this one because that hearing took place in December of 2025 when the 2018 plan was still in place. So that is the RPP you're reviewing for consistency with, not the 2025 current plan. You also must find consistency with applicable municipal development bylaws, local comprehensive plan if one is in place and is commission certified, any applicable district of critical planning concern implementing regulations, and then separately, a finding that the probable benefit from the project is greater than its probable detriment. You have in front of you, if you're in the room physically, a copy of a draft DRI decision that contains findings of consistency with all of these development of regional impact review standards, with the exception of the DCPC implementing regulations, as there are none applicable to this project. Just to situate the site, under the RPP, we classify different areas based on their built-in natural characteristics into place types. Some are mapped, some are identified by narrative descriptions. The red rectangle in the center roughly encompasses the project site. The light green areas are mapped natural areas place types, which do not overlap with the project site. And this entire screen, it might be difficult to see, is actually under a light pink shading that indicates the Community Activity Center mapped place type. So it's located entirely within that place type. And there are no other sensitive natural areas or wildlife and habitat areas mapped on this site. The strategy for community activity centers is to encourage and accommodate mixed-use multifamily residential development in these locations, as they tend to be dense areas that are walkable, bikeable, and contain a variety of different uses. The draft decision includes findings of consistency with the following RPP goals and objectives and technical bulletin guidance as applicable. These are water resources, community design, coastal resiliency, transportation, energy, climate mitigation, and housing. So I'll touch on each of these briefly. For water resources, the project is consistent with objectives 1 and 4 to protect, preserve, and restore groundwater quality, manage and treat stormwater to protect and preserve water quality. Project will be connected to municipal sewer, will not include any new on-site wastewater treatment. The site-wide nitrogen loading is anticipated to be 1.02 parts per million, which is less than the 5 parts per million maximum allowed in the technical bulletin and less than the current nitrogen loading estimate of 1.3 parts per million site-wide. Project will also reduce impervious cover compared to existing conditions and improve stormwater treatment. For community design, objectives CD1 and 2, promote context-sensitive building and site design, and minimize the amount of newly disturbed land and impervious surfaces. The draft decision contains findings of consistency with both of those. The building includes a variety of features such as setbacks and projections on street-facing elevations, variation in the materials to provide an overall variation in the facades, as well as fourth floor setback and rooftop terraces and a gabled roof to minimize the perceived building mass. The building also includes traditional materials, as the project architect explained, and project site is previously developed, and the build condition will result in less impervious coverage and more landscaping elements than are currently existing. For coastal resiliency, objectives CR 1, 2, and 3 were deemed applicable. Those are to minimize development within the floodplain, plan for sea level rise, erosion, and floods, and reduce vulnerability of the built environment to coastal hazards. So this project site is mapped within the FEMA AE flood zone with a base flood elevation of 9 feet. For projects proposed in A zones, the applicant must demonstrate that there is an overriding public purpose, no feasible alternative, and impacts to coastal resources have been minimized and mitigated. They should also limit new development on or near coastal banks and elevate structures at least 1 foot above the base flood elevation. This project site is developed. It's not proximate to a coastal bank. Building is 2 feet above the BFE for a design flood elevation of 11 feet and reduces impervious coverage and improves stormwater management. As far as the public purpose, project is providing new housing units with a significant number of those income restricted as affordable and or reserved for year-round or public employees, and is supported by the town through their RFP process. For transportation, all 3 objectives, improving safety, providing healthy transportation options, and mitigating for congestion impacts are relevant. The applicant prepared an appropriate transportation impact assessment consistent with our guidelines. Project was anticipated to create 182 new daily vehicle trips with 14 to 16 at peak hours of service. That's generally a very low trip estimate compared to what we typically see for DRIs. And I'll note that The estimates here did not take into account any reduction for the proportion of trips likely to be pedestrian or bicyclists. So this is a conservative estimate. In practice, in Provincetown, it's likely that a significant number of those trips will not be motor vehicles, but will be people on foot or on bike. The project is proposing 3 on-site parking spots, a significant number of external bicycle racks, and will implement a transportation demand management plan. For the energy goal, objectives 1, 2, and 3, to support renewable energy development, increase resiliency, and minimize energy consumption through design, are relevant here. The project will be designed to support a solar PV array on the roof, and the project as conditioned will require either installation of rooftop solar or documentation of a renewable power purchase agreement as a condition to compliance. Project also proposes electric HVAC systems, heat pumps, energy efficient features, and is designed to be LEED certifiable and meet the stretch energy code. For climate mitigation, a lot of these objectives overlap with what was just discussed for energy, but the project, as noted, will include bicycle parking, a charging station for an electric vehicle, and is within a dense walkable district, which should minimize the carbon impacts of transportation attributable to the project. It also proposes energy efficiency measures in the design and will provide either on-site renewable generation or enter into a renewable power purchase agreement. For housing, objectives 1, 2, and 3, promote an increase in housing diversity and choice, promote an increase in year-round housing supply, and increasing housing affordability are relevant here, and the project meets consistency with all of those. As noted, it provides 40 new home ownership units with a mixture of different sizes, 18 studios, 18 one-bedrooms, and 4 two-bedrooms. All of these units are less than 1,200 square feet, many of them significantly less, which is encouraged by the housing objectives and technical bulletin. 10 of these units will be reserved for households earning 80 to 150% of AMI. So those units will meet the definition that the commission has for affordable or workforce housing. And I'll note that as the applicant stated, this significantly exceeds the requirements of the RPP, which are to provide 10% of units. Those 10 units represent 25% of all the units. In addition, the applicant is providing restrictions for additional units in the building, potentially at other higher bands of income, but that are below market rate, and or providing additional restrictions such as reserving them for year-round employees or municipal employees, as outlined in the state's seasonal communities designation regulations. For municipal development bylaws and local comprehensive plan, Provincetown has a certified LCP, certified in 2024. There are no DCPC implementing regulations. Projects located in a commercial zoning district where the LCP encourages new growth. It provides the requisite amount of affordable or community housing units. It's required in the specific form-based code district where it's located. And project furthers the LCP's goal to develop creative housing options for rental or purchase that will support a thriving and diverse community. And there is communication in the record from Provincetown town staff recommending consistency with these municipal development bylaws and LCP strategies. The draft decision also includes a list of probable benefits and detriments and a finding that those benefits outweigh the detriments. The sole detriment was that the project includes only 3 motor vehicle parking spaces. Among the benefits are that it provides a significant amount of affordable units, that it provides affordable units for home ownership rather than just rental, that it is exploring additional restrictions beyond just those 10 units conditioned in this decision to provide housing for municipal employees and other categories of workers and residents who don't typically qualify for income restricted housing, but for which there's a demonstrated need in the town. And generally its location within a community activity center in an area that the town has prioritized for new and redevelopment. Also worth noting that the project is a public-private partnership and is supported by the town, as demonstrated by the award of significant funding at town meeting. So you have a draft decision before you, so I won't go into too much detail on all the conditions, but a few of these I think are worth highlighting. Conditions that require both a draft and final executed deed restrictions on those affordable and income restricted units will be provided to commission staff, as well as a copy of the draft and a final condominium master deed to ensure that condominium fees are not excessive and are proportioned in a way that's proportionate to the value of the unit, such that the affordable units aren't later hit with condominium fees that they're unable to cover. Also, the conditions include implementation of a transportation demand management program, which includes designating an on-site coordinator to provide information on transit services, manage parking, on-site installation of bicycle racks, 46, which exceeds 1 per unit. And also a condition that prior to the final certificate of compliance, the applicant either demonstrates that they've installed solar on site or they will provide documentation of renewable power purchase agreement. So that is all I have, and happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Alex. We'll move now to the first round of commission member questions and discussion, and start with members of the subcommittee who may wish to speak. Peter?
Thank you. I want to thank the applicant for going through the process with us and all the other subcommittee members involved. A few points that I'd like to make. This was a town requested project. They wanted to prioritize people and a number of units versus over parking. And that's part of the reason why the project came out the way it did. It helps provide the possibility of housing for town employees and other year-round employees, such as at the health clinic or the banks, with a place that they can afford to purchase and live. Many of our town employees actually live as far away as Mid-Cape and have over on 1 hour commute time each way in the winter, worse in the summer. So I actually spoke with a number of, and we heard from a couple of employees from the town who are very much interested in being able to participate in this project. Parking is, if you look at all the comments, you'll notice that many of the comments that are negative are regarding the parking. In discussions in the subcommittee, we pretty much, push that off because it's not really our purview to worry about parking. But it is the purview of the Provincetown Zoning Board of Appeals, where they will have to get approval for this. And it's kind of a groundbreaking project to have this many units and have virtually no parking. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with it. We just felt that it really wasn't Cape Cod Commission purview for that. I do have one question. It's something that I raised, and I just, I want to make sure that it gets into the record that I suggested that the possibility of the EV charging station being moved across the street to the public parking where I assume most of the people who live in this unit will be parking their cars or trying to. And I'm hoping that the applicant is going to try to move forward and work with the town on trying to make that something that happens. So otherwise, I am in favor of the project, and I'm interested to hear what other people have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Peter. Kevin?
Actually, I think Michelle had her hand up.
Okay.
First, I'll defer.
Michelle,
to her.
go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Kevin. Yeah, I was on the subcommittee as well. I do want to thank the applicant, and I'm completely in favor of this project. It was very kind of heartwarming and quite overwhelming to be in the Provincetown Town Hall and have as many members of the town and government officials in the select board and those that would actually benefit from this project show up and speak up in favor of this project. You know, the description of the people that would actually benefit from this are called, you know, as we know, the missing middle. And it's people that provide our services like they did last week, you know, the police and the fire department and the healthcare workers and school teachers, et cetera, who, you know, as Peter said, you know, travel like quite a distance to provide support for those of us that live in the community. And so not only is it providing, you know, housing, and it's deed restricted. So we also had, you know, the housing folks from the town speak up about how this would be actually controlled, because you put a property of that price point on the market, and who's to say somebody from, you know, Connecticut or Providence isn't going to, you know, come in and scoop it up, right? So we had a number of questions about that. And then the actual physical project itself, yes, parking is an issue, but there is, you know, a decrease in impervious surface, which, you know, is something we all want to see, especially given the fragile nature of the environment there. And, you know, and the prioritizing people over parking, I think, although we all had questions about the parking, the fact that the benefits to those that this project would serve far outweigh that negative detriment, you know, creates a strong support on my part for the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also struggled with the parking issue. At first, I thought it was a misprint when it said 3 spaces for 40 units. And I really had to sit with this notion of prioritizing people over parking, and it made a lot of sense to me. I think that this is a great example, a very creative example of a public-private partnership, which has been strongly supported by the town, which allows them the flexibility of really determining who will be eligible to live in 75% of the units. And so that is a very impressive part of the project to me. I think what it also does, and we saw this recently with the Captain Birdie's Way project, is that it provides another type of affordable housing. Most of the affordable housing that we see are rental units. And this is the second project that we've had come to us recently that provides an ownership option for people at an affordable level. And I think that just increasing the diversity of options for folks is a very positive thing. I do have one question, and this is the first time I picked it up, but your traffic study showed that you're going to have 182 additional trips. Where are they going to be coming from? Because nobody's going to be parking there. So I was just surprised to see that.
I don't think our traffic engineer is here this afternoon, but it's basically just using the ITE figures for this number of units. Again, as Alex said, this is highly conservative. It's simply plugging in the ITE ratios for 40 units of housing. It also doesn't, another way it's very conservative, it doesn't take into consideration any credits for the prior police station use. So the net number of trips is going to be significantly less than that.
Great, thank you. And I also support this project. Thank you.
Doug, please go ahead.
Yes, I too served on the subcommittee. All the concerns that I'm hearing were expressed. Unfortunately, I have to leave in about 10 minutes. So I just want to say that all the concerns and questions I had were all addressed and answered at the subcommittee. And I would hope that the full commission votes to grant the approval of the DRI and moves ahead, and to commend the work that's being done, especially wrestling with the issue of people over parking in Provincetown. We all know what parking is like in Provincetown, but hooray that people are taking the top road here. So thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. On the balconies, I'd like to know if there will be glass panels used on the balconies. Glass panels are typically used as a windbreak in this area, and they are deadly to birds. So that would be an adverse impact to development if you could share.
Jeffrey, are you
There
there?
wouldn't be, no glass, certainly no glass
Okay,
panel
thank
on
you.
the balustrades, no.
Thank you. The second question is, will there be charging capability for e-bikes and e-scooters? You'll have a lot of bike racks, but it's really the trend nowadays, these e-bikes and e-scooters. Will you have, I don't even know what kind of charging cable they use, but I think they are a lot of different kinds, but perhaps you can.
Katie has come to me. Nobody's asked that yet.
Oh,
We don't have anything planned. It's a very challenging site. It's a very tight site. A lot of time has been spent with the MEP engineers figuring out how we're going to service everything. So no, honestly, I don't think we have any room to contemplate that. That's a good question. It's a good question, but
I really don't know even what is needed. Maybe it's just a plug.
I think you just plug them in
don't
inside your house,
know.
but yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm not 100% sure.
Perhaps it's just an idea to consider at some time.
It's a
Okay.
good question. Thank
Right.
you for that.
And then I have one final question, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. I share the concerns that have been expressed about parking. I have a different perspective on this that I'd like to share because we've been struggling with this in Hyannis and have made decisions to increase the parking requirement, even in the downtown Hyannis area, which one would think is walkable in the same way that downtown Provincetown is walkable. But I see that there's already an important strain on parking throughout the town. And this is, of course, for all of us, we know, even more challenging during the tourism season. So residents with cars will need to find a parking space to rent. Is it the plan to seek that out from the town in a public lot somewhere where they could lease the space? What are your thoughts on that?
So the town has multiple municipal lots scattered around the town, and there's plans to build more along Route 6. That would be something that would need to be addressed by the town planner, but they are planning to expand parking and I think also offer shuttle buses into town from those lots. I don't want to misspeak on the plans, but there are plans to increase. And I own a home with no parking. I own a 2-family home in Provincetown with no parking, and I manage. And I'm just a one person, but I think a lot of people don't have parking in the town core, and I buy a parking pass for $50 and can park in any of the town lots over the years. So parking is very affordable. People won't have to rent a spot for 2 or 3 or 4. I mean, there was a project recently proposed where parking was proposed up to 700. It was a lot of money, but really the town is very good at providing parking. And I know in the middle of summer it can be challenging. But I think that also speaks to the ultimate direction that Provincetown wants to go in, which is to really encourage people to not drive down Commercial Street just because they don't. They can. I think that we're a very walkable place, and especially in the summer, the businesses on Commercial Street are very good at getting their deliveries first thing in the morning. We do manage, and I think that also even for the $50 parking pass per year doesn't include Macmillan Pier, and I think it's a little bit more to get that one. So certainly it is affordable in town. We have had conversations with the town about some other lots that are very close that they will probably develop and turn into parking for residents as well. Just exclusively for residents of the town as opposed to just anybody. So the town recognizes the challenge. They are working on it, and I think that it is actually a model for a small urban environment that is navigable by scooters and electric bikes bikes and just walking and cycling and that it can be a really pleasant experience. So I see 2 cents on it. Another personal anecdote. I did live in New York City for many years, and they last year proposed this sort of not ban, but charge to cars who are coming into Manhattan, and it's quite expensive. And it really did. It's called something. I can't remember what it's called, but it congestion pricing plan, and it really did lower the amount of vehicles coming in. I know I never want to drive into New York City again if you could be avoided. But when you adjust to that, when you adjust to a lifestyle that is a little bit perhaps more urban or European, you find that you're not defaulting to just getting into a car, and it is a very healthy lifestyle. And different places in the world navigate it perfectly well, and I think that we can too. So that's just my pitch for it. But and again, if we had room on that site to have parking spots, we would. But from the beginning, we've made it a priority to accommodate people and not vehicles.
So I just would note that the RFP from the town asked for 24 units only, and perhaps they weren't good at measuring. I don't really know that. And certainly it makes sense that you would end up with more units when you're actually doing the real design rather than in your imagination thinking, how many units do you think you could have there? But I personally have also lived in the Washington, D.C. area right at a metro station.
Yeah.
And it was unrealistic to take parking spaces away. It just didn't work out. So I have that experience. Perhaps your experience is a little different in New York City. I would never drive to New York City, quite honestly, because I know it's a challenge and I know it's very expensive. But my concern with respect to Provincetown has to do with the spillover effect of a resident needing a place to park their car, and suddenly that's 1 or perhaps 20 parking spaces no longer available for the tourism industry. We live in a tourism-dependent economy, and suddenly tourists and visitors to the town don't have anywhere to park. I see that as a potential adverse impact to the tourism economy of Provincetown by reducing the availability of parking. Then people have to be pushed out into the neighborhoods for parking, and then even beyond the town of Provincetown to find parking options. I just have a different point of view on parking. I just see this parking issue as an area that I'm concerned about. I'm not sure that you have a solution for me at this time.
I don't have a solution for all of the problems.
Well,
but this
darn.
it did call for 24, but in conversations with members of town hall and also the select board, they were, if memory serves correct, this was a few years ago, really hoping for more than 30 units. And I'm very proud to work with Jeffrey Burchard on multiple projects. And we know that there's, it's being a resident of Provincetown, and I'm sure that Peter can attest to this as well. Speaking to residents there, there's so many people who are looking for housing and people who get moved around multiple times a year looking for places. And so we really just wanted to and I've heard people say, if I only had 300 square feet of my own, and our smallest units are 440, and they're very well designed. We really obsessed over the layouts of every single unit. And, so we just wanted to bring as many housing units to bear as possible. And honestly, if we made the building smaller, we wouldn't have been able to make that many parking spots anyway, when you think of the actual footprint. So the parking was always a challenge. I hope that helps. Thanks for the question.
Not really. I'm still struggling.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in hearing what the subcommittee members may have said when you all were talking about this. I'm sure that it came up. Yeah. If you wouldn't mind sharing, I'd be interested in that. I'm still struggling.
Peter, go ahead.
So, as I said, we also struggled with that. We basically came to the conclusion that it's parking, and Alex, I don't know, you can step in on this. We just, we determined that parking issue just wasn't part of our purview. But it's certainly the part of the Zoning Board of Appeals purview. And I used to be on the zoning board of appeals, and I can tell you that they will look at this very, very closely. In terms of, you know, how, because this is very revolutionary, basically. We're groundbreaking in terms of the way this is. I can tell you that because this project is targeted towards town employees, specifically town employees who either are having difficulty with housing in town or living out of town, they pretty much already have their parking permits for municipal parking. And so it's not going to be that much of a change for them, except for the fact that they won't have those long commutes to get to work. So I think that, you know, it's going to be an issue that's going to be brought up within the town, but I just don't think it's, I'm convinced that it's really not the purview of the commission to deal with it. And that was the discussion, that was the conclusions we kind of like came to in the subcommittee.
Thank you for those comments, Peter. Kevin?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through you to Catherine. Yeah, again, we wrestled with this. I mean, it was, you know, seems like a big issue. There is a municipal parking lot across the street, across Shank Painter Road, and the town has contemplated making that resident-only parking. So that's an option anyway if you have a parking pass, but it may be designated as resident parking. There are municipal lots within walking distance of this location. And to your point of, you know, how does this impact tourism? This is just a personal belief I have, is that if I'm here as a tourist, I probably shouldn't be driving into Provincetown. I should probably be driving to a remote lot somewhere where I can park my car and be able to take a shuttle into town. And I think that could be easily incentivized, and the town is looking at, as I think Christine said, options in terms of parking that's a little bit closer to Route 6. And so it was very much a balancing act. And again, this notion of prioritizing housing over parking, with the understanding that there were options available to people. It's not what I think of. I think of as I drive up to my house and I get out of the car, and I used to have an attached garage, so I didn't even have to go outside of the house. I could go directly into the house from a garage. It's a different way of living, and I think it is something that is something, as Peter said, Provincetown residents are more used to that. But if there weren't options available for people, I would have had a harder time with this, but there are in fact parking options.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Jackie?
I was concerned about the phrasing used for affordable housing. And you're saying affordable and or workforce. How is a workforce being defined, and by whom and where?
Alex?
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. So the affordable and workforce in the decision are capitalized because they are referencing the definitions in the Commission's Housing Technical Bulletin. So affordable is defined as units available to people making at or below 80% of AMI. And then workforce is defined as units affordable to households making between 80 to 120% of AMI in the technical bulletin currently.
Well, the problem is in that first bullet under F67, you have provides 10 units in a 40-unit development to be deed restricted as affordable and or. So they could all could be workforce, and none of them are affordable under that language.
That is correct, and that is consistent with the requirements in the technical bulletin. As long as you meet 10%, they can be any combination of affordable and or workforce. So it would be consistent if they were all workforce and one was affordable, or if 9 were affordable and one was workforce. Either or any range of those options are technically consistent with our standards.
Well, if the public are expecting a affordable, And what happens is they are only workforce housing, which is this sentence would allow, there may be some disappointment in Provincetown. So I think that should be reconsidered. And then the second concern I had is normally when you're talking about affordable housing, you need housing that's affordable in perpetuity. And this only talks about as being deed restricted. And haven't dealt with deeds in a long time, but my understanding is they're usually only for 20 years, and maybe they can be re-upped. I don't know. But why not use the phrase in perpetuity, which would be very clear? And I think you need to be especially concerned when you're dealing with a development that's a private-public partnership. Thank you.
Alex?
I don't know if the applicant maybe wants to speak to the terms of the deed restriction length, but my understanding is that this language is consistent with the requirements in the technical bulletin.
Yeah, this is how the commission has always handled restricting units in every housing decision that you've adopted. It's always been via deed restriction, which the commission staff reviews and approves before it's recorded.
Well, having known projects where the affordable units became no longer affordable after 20 years, I think that we should be looking at using the phrase in perpetuity.
Yeah, I mean, whereas the town is going to hold the restriction here, I believe that they are for the length of the project. So as long as the project's there, those units have to be restricted.
Okay, that sounds like reasonable language. And if that's in F67, then good.
Yeah, I mean, this condition is identical, as far as I know, to the last housing projects that the commission has approved, that language in the condition. And I have gone through one of them recently by providing the Captain Birdie's project, providing the deed restrictions in draft to the town staff, to the commission staff, that actually are based on the language from the town of Provincetown. So it's a restriction actually that the town requests, and then we've given it to commission staff for approval. It's the exact same language that's in this draft decision.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jackie. John, did you have a question?
I have a question and a couple of comments. First of all, I think this is a very exciting project for the community and a repurpose of the police station. And I too have a concern about the language. I've always, not always, but for a long time, it's been in perpetuity. It's been the language. In Falmouth, we had a development that was done 15 years. The 15 years are up, and now they're selling them as market rate units. And since that time, everything else has been in perpetuity for the language. And a question here, you have 10 units here that are deed restricted and 20 that are income restricted. So what does that mean? How is that going to work? I know you want to have it for town employees, but what kind of formula are you using for the word income restricted?
So I have, this is still in, will be subject to agreement with the town, but essentially the contemplation is a range of different levels of income ranging from like 150, 160%, 210% up to 230% of AMI. So it'll be below market, but income
So it'll be
restricted.
like 4 units at one level, 4 units another level.
Exactly, that's the idea.
situation?
Yeah.
And that's going to be in conjunction with
The town of Provincetown.
town
Yeah.
management, and that too will be in perpetuity.
Yes, I mean, there's as was mentioned, there was funding that was authorized at town meeting to help offset the cost of these restrictions.
And that was my next question. The $4 million, is that being used to subsidize these units? For the 30 units are going to be
That's the
not market
concept.
rate.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And then I think I have one more question. So 75% of the 30 of the 40 units are going to be income restricted, some fashion. On the condominium board seats, will they have 75% of the seats also? I think that's very important.
Once the units are sold, the developer doesn't control the condominium board.
But they control their condominium documents before they're sold. I think it's very important that the 75% of deed restricted units have 75% of the votes. Having done a fair amount of developments on my own, including a lot of affordable housing.
Okay.
I see what happens if you don't protect their position in the future.
Okay. Duly noted. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, John. Any other questions from?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to provide a follow-up to that. So for the condominium master deed, there is the condition that they will have to submit the draft of that for staff to review, as well as the finalized version of that for review and approval before they get their final certificate of compliance. So your comments are noted, and it's something that staff will make a point to look for when reviewing those drafts. I did also want to note that within the housing findings related to the condominium fees, there is also language for the affordable and workforce units stating that fees will be assessed to maintain affordability in perpetuity as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you for that. John?
I'm sorry, I have one more question. This has to do with our policy, I guess, other than anything else. But we have 69 findings here and 17 conditions. What is the difference for the applicant when we vote this? I don't understand the difference. Are the findings something that they have to adhere to, or is it just a suggestion? Because I understand what conditions means, but I'm not sure what the findings means when we make these decisions. I should have asked this question 6 months ago, but
yeah, I can handle that. So the findings are basically how you articulate all the aspects of the project that have been found and put into the record. So it's the description of the project essentially, and findings that it meets the applicable standards. The conditions, one of the conditions, a number of the standard conditions incorporate those findings into the project. So it requires that the project be constructed and built and maintained consistent with all those findings. So when the findings state something about particular aspect of the design of the project or a finding about the number of units that need to be affordable, the conditions then incorporate those findings. And if anything about those findings changes with respect to the project, they may need to seek a modification of the decision. Other conditions require certain documentation that they provide to us at different stages of compliance prior to getting final sign-off that their project is compliant and can be constructed and or sold.
okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Any commission members online who have any further questions? Seeing none. Any final comments from the applicant or staff? All set there. Next, we'll move to public testimony. Any federal, state, or local officials who wish to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing none, any members of the public who wish to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I will close public comment and move to the final set of commission member questions or discussions. Peter?
Thank you. I was hoping that some people from the town might answer this, but during testimony in the subcommittee, it was made pretty clear that effectively ownership of these units will be monitored and governed by the town's housing authority. So it's just to say when the units come available, They go through the authority and to qualified applicants, and then there's a lottery that basically is how it's done in our town. And the intent is, the way it was presented to us is that going forward, a unit comes up for sale. Depending on which category it fit into, the town makes sure that it still fits into that category. In other words, they control the pricing. I believe, there was nothing mentioned about anything expiring. But the town is going to basically, is going to be the ones who monitor and control this. They're the ones who put a lot of the money into this. So that's, part of that. And then, in final comment, I would say that I think this is a worthwhile project. It helps, Provincetown has a lot of units coming online shortly. We have 62 units of affordable rental housing coming online. We have Captain Birdie's Way. This project addresses the missing middle, is what they basically called it. The people who don't qualify for affordable housing, but still need help in finding housing in town. Not just employees, but year-round people. It's restricted. People are going to have to sign. They're not going to be able to use, buy them and use them for Airbnbs and things like that. So I fully support this, and I hope the rest of the commission will as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Peter. We've had an interesting discussion about this project and looked at the different aspects of it. I personally am impressed with the creativity that went into this project and the approach to address housing as the priority. So at that point, seeing no further commission member discussion, I would entertain a motion to adopt the draft decision and approve the 26 Shank Painter Road Development of Regional Impact as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Peter.
Second, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. And Jeff, if you could take the roll.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Catherine Ledeck,
Yes.
Elizabeth Taylor,
Yes.
Tom Wilson,
Yes.
Michelle Vian,
Yes.
John Drewley,
Yes.
Jacqueline Edston,
Yes.
Douglas Fromm. Oh, I'm sorry, he left. Peter Oken.
Yes.
Kevin Grunwald,
Yes.
David Mead Fox,
Yes.
Dennis Previnson,
Yes.
and John Harris.
Yes.
With 11 votes in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you to the applicant and staff for your presentations today, and good luck with your project. Next item on our agenda is any new business. Any commission members have new business? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. So moved.
All right, and seconded. Thank you. And Jeff, if you could take the roll, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Catherine Ledeck,
Yes.
Elizabeth Taylor,
Yes.
Tom Wilson,
Yes.
Michelle Vian,
Yes.
John Drewley,
Yes.
Jacqueline Edston, Doug Fromm. Oh, sorry, I did it again. Peter Oken,
Yes.
Kevin Grunwald,
Yes.
David Mead Fox,
Yes.
Dennis Previnson,
Yes.
John Harris,
Yes.
and Carlos Barbosa.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes with 12 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you all. See you next time.